Welcome, MTG Burgeoning viewer. This is a quick message to remind you of our rewards for September. If we get at least 30 subscribers during the month of September, then one subscriber will be chosen at random and receive an entire set of Modern Horizon art cards. Also, any subscriber who comments on every MTG Burgeoning video during the month of September will become eligible for the October Pack Wars. On October 1st, a list will be compiled of all subscribers that commented on every MTG Burgeoning video released during September. From this list, one subscriber will be chosen at random to participate in the October Pack Wars for free. If the chosen subscriber is already a Pack Wars supporter or member, then that subscriber will receive a second spot in the October Pack Wars. So be sure to leave a comment and prepare for war. We're MTG Burgeoning. This is Build a Deck Tuesday. Subscribe now and join the movement. Burgeonites, you have returned. You are back. You want another piece of that deck building goodness. You joined us for the construction of Zaxara the Exemplary. You saw it through. We completed it, and it is a great deck. And now you've come back looking for the next deck that we're going to build. Well, I don't want to delay any longer. Let's put out our EDH Commander General, and let's start building around Riku of Two Reflections. Riku of Two Reflections is 2 and a teamer, which is a blue, red, and green for a legendary human wizard. He only sports a 2/2 body, but it's not those stats that are making him so appealing to be our commander for this Build a Deck event. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we may add a blue and a red, an Izzet, and if we do, we copy that spell and we may choose new targets for the copy. But it doesn't end there. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under our control, we may pay a green and a blue, a Simic combo. And if we do, we put a token that's a copy of that creature onto the battlefield. So Riku of Two Reflections is going to focus on copying some prime, choicey, very powerful instant and sorcery spells, as well as some great creatures with some enter the battlefield triggers, with a theme on creatures that enter the battlefield and create tokens. Similar to Zaxara the Exemplary, I will provide the first, we'll say 12 cards this time, the first dozen cards of this EDH build. And let's start with what I consider to be one of the most important cards of the entire deck. Now, if we take another quick look at Riku, he's got a CMC of 5, and he's a very fragile 2/2 that offers no protection. So I think it's safe to believe that there's going to be games where he's going to be sent to the command zone or the graveyard many, many times. And plus, in order to really take advantage of his abilities, we need to have some open mana, an Izzet pairing or a Simic pairing, in order to get these copies going. So Riku is going to be a very mana-intensive deck. It's going to be hungry for that mana. So we got to make sure that we keep mana open, that we have mana. And one of the best ways that we're going to be able to do that, particularly with the number of creature tokens that we're going to plan to make in this deck, is with a card called Earthcraft. We're going all the way back for Tempest for this card. For 1 and a green, it's an enchantment that reads, tap an untapped creature we control to untap target basic land. Now notice the text. This is not similar to what Cryptolith Rites does. Cryptolith Rites says, each creature we control has tap symbol, add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. Why Earthcraft is so much more superior to Cryptolith is that it doesn't provide the abilities to the creatures. So that means that a creature can come into play still suffering from summoning sickness and still tap to untap one of our basic lands. So as long as we have some basic lands in play, which we are going to have basic lands in play, and they're going to be tapped, we can use our creatures to untap those basic lands and get even more mana. Earthcraft is my first inclusion in this Riku of Two Reflections commander deck. Now, as we were introducing Riku, talking about what we're trying to do with the focus of this deck, we did talk about how we wanted to copy some bomb, instant, and or sorcery spells to help close out the game. And we're talking commanders, so there are very few sorcery spells that are going to be as powerful as Tooth and Nail. For 5 and 2 green, we search our library for up to 2 creature cards. We reveal them, put them into our hand, and then shuffle our library. Or we put 2 creature cards from our hand onto the battlefield. We get to pick if we pay 5 and 2 green. However, if we entwine it for an additional 2 generic mana, we can do both. And we almost always want to entwine a Tooth and Nail. Add an additional red and blue from Riku, and we're going to do Tooth and Nail twice. And one entwined Tooth and Nail is generally enough to win a game, or at least set ourselves up for imminent victory very soon after. 2 Tooth and Nail simultaneously, well, you can forget about that, folks. That's probably going to be the game. Another sorcery that we're going to look to copy with Riku, and that's going to be Rite of Replication. For 2 and 2 blue, we put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target creature. If we kick Rite of Replication by throwing another 5 generic mana on top of it, we put 5 of those tokens onto the battlefield instead. So for 7 and 2 blue, we're getting 5 tokens of target creature. If we add a blue and a red, for a CMC of 11, let's get the math right here. For a CMC of 11, we're getting 10 creature tokens put onto the battlefield. Rite of Replication will seem a lot more powerful as the deck list grows and we start to see which creatures we're including into this build. But it's definitely going to be added for the purposes of this deck. Alright, so we also mentioned during the introduction of Riku that we're planning to include a token theme. Particularly creatures that when they enter the battlefield, they create tokens. And if we're looking for a token theme, it makes sense to include Doubling Season. For 4 and a green, if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under our control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. And if an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent we control, it puts twice that many of those counters on that permanent instead. Now, admittedly, because of the particular focus of this deck that we're looking to have, the first effect of the tokens will be a much more evident than the second effect. But that does not mean that we will not have some cards in this deck that will take advantage of permanents that have counters coming into play. But Doubling Season is a great card to include for this deck. Alright, and here we go. Top 5. We're going back to our sorcery spells. And this one, well, if you've ever cast this one or participated in a game when this was cast, you like it, you hate it. There really isn't a lot of gray area when we're talking about Warp World. Alright, so for 5 and triple red, each player shuffles all permanents he or she owns into his or her library, then reveals that many cards from the top of their library. Each player puts all artifact, creature, and land cards revealed this way into play, then puts all enchantment cards revealed this way into play, then puts the rest on the bottom of their library in any order. If we are trying to construct a deck that has a token theme, particularly with creatures that enter the battlefield and create tokens, then it's safe to think that we should, in the majority, if not all of our games, have a much more advanced board state than our opponents. In this instance, advanced board state indicates number of permanents we control. And if that is the case, then when we cast Warp World with a deck that is pretty heavily, slanted towards permanence, we should come out on top after casting and resolving a Warp World, because we're preparing for it, as opposed to our opponents who, let's be honest, if any of them are playing any type of spell slinger deck and they can't counter Warp World, they're going to be in a world of hurts because they're not going to have many permanents left after they shuffle in their lands. And imagine if we slap on a blue and a red to this casting cost, making it a 10 CMC by copying it with Riku, and Warp World resolves twice for what we're going to have in this deck. That could be game ending. So Warp World is a nice card that we're going to include as one of our potential win conditions. All right, and here's the first half. This is number 6. This will close out the first half dozen cards we're going to include in this Riku deck. Back to sorceries, and here we are with Genesis Wave. For X and triple green, we reveal the top X cards of our library. Put any number of permanent cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield, then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put onto the battlefield right into our graveyard. Copy that with Riku up there with the addition of a blue and a red, and we Genesis Wave for 2. Again, these spells, similar to Warp World, similar to Rite of Replication, even similar to Tooth and Nail, these spells will look a lot more powerful as the deck becomes closer and closer to completion. So just keep these spells in mind as we add the next, let's see what the next 6, 70, 80, 90 cards to this deck. All right, next card up, we're going back to Enchantment Land, and it is going to be with a Sneak Attack. 3 and a red. We pay a red, we choose a creature card from our hand and put it into play. It has haste, and you know a card is old when it says the creature is unaffected by summoning sickness. And then at the beginning of the next end step, we sacrifice that creature. This is going to help us as a cost reduction for the optimization and maximization. Sure, we'll own it. We'll own that word of trying to get our creatures into play, copying them with Riku in order to generate 2 enter the battlefield triggers. We'll lose the token copy, or we will lose the original creature that Sneak Attack brings into play, but then we'll have the copy of the creature made by Riku and twice the number of tokens. And if we have Doubling Season in play as well, now we're looking to close out a game very quickly. So Sneak Attack is going to be included as a way in which to look out for those cost reductions. All right, we're down to our last 5 cards. Card number 8 is Intuition. We started at Tempest and we're going back to Tempest. 2 and a blue, we search our library for any 3 cards and reveal them to target opponent. He or she chooses one, and then we put that card into our hand and the other 2 into our graveyard. This is a great card to help us get any one of our numerous win conditions that we've already talked about. Additionally, as the deck list continues to evolve, it is most likely going to include Intuition packages where we include something like Eternal Witness, Regrowth, because if we choose both of those cards as 2 of the 3, and then our third card, say, is Tooth and Nail, in one way or another, Tooth and Nail is going to end up in our hand. Either our opponent's going to pick it for us, or we're going to Regrowth it or Eternal Witness it back into our hands. And there will be some other additional cards that we'll include down the road that can help make Intuition shine even further. But can you imagine with an extra blue and a red and copying Intuition twice with Riku? Intuition, great card. Number 8. All right, our bottom 4. Speaking of graveyard shenanigans, we got Snapcaster Mage. For 1 and a blue, this human wizard has flash and it's a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery card in our graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. And the flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. So if we pull Snappy back here for a moment and look at some of these instant and sorcery spells that we've already gone through. Tooth and Nail, we can cast that again. Genesis Wave, we can cast that again because we pay the X. So the flashback spell, the flashback costs having X in it, we could still pay that. Rite of Replication, we can still cast that. Intuition, we can still cast that. Warp World, we can still cast that. So Snapcaster Mage lets us get some additional use out of the sorceries and instants that are already in our graveyard. Okay. There's Snapcaster Mage. Next up, if we're talking a token-themed deck, then we're talking about card advantage, then we gotta throw in a Skull Clamp. Tap 1, cast it, equip for 1. Equip creature gets +1/-1, and whenever equip creature dies, we draw 2 cards. And it's safe to think that in foreshadowing some of the potential creatures that are going to be included in this deck that create tokens when they enter the battlefield, many, if not all of them, will have toughness of 1. So it will be very easy to get a Skull Clamp into play, equip it to some creatures, and have those creatures go straight to the graveyard in order for us to keep our hand fresh with cards. All right, last 2 cards. Here they are. Druid's Repository. For 1 and 2 green, whenever a creature we control attacks, put a charge counter on Druid's Repository. We remove a charge counter from it, and we can add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. This is going to help us to accumulate mana, because as we spoke of earlier in this video, Riku of 2 Reflections is a very mana-hungry commander. So having as many ways in which to generate mana, colored mana, is going to be, optimal in order to have the Riku engine revving at full capacity. And Druid's Repository is one of the cards that can do that. We have so many tokens that we can just send into battle. We don't mind if they end up going to the graveyard, because they'll put some charge counters on Druid's Repository in order for us to reap colored mana in the future. And our last card, card number 12. I gave you guys the first 12, and then you're going to give me all the rest. Card number 12 is Exploration. 1 green, it comes down, lets us play an additional land on each of our turns. Helps us to ramp up our mana, helps us to get Riku out quicker, copying things quicker, casting bigger spells. And that is all. Those are the first 12. The next 12, leave a comment here below. Click on the tappedout.net deck list below. Leave a comment there if you prefer. The next 12 cards, let's focus on those creatures that enter the battlefield and create creature tokens. We should prioritize non-legendary creatures in order to keep the copies on the battlefield. That's not written in stone, of course, but we should make it a prioritization to get some non-legendary creatures in play. And additionally, it would be optimal if the creatures that we select have burst token abilities, which means they create more than just 1 when they come into battlefield. That is our task. Those are the first 12. Let me know about the next 12. This is MTG Burgeoning. This is Build the Deck Tuesday. We built Zaxara. Now let's build Riku. Want to become a Pack Wars combatant? 4 easy steps. Step number 1. Click on the link below in the description, or go to www.buymeacoffee.com/MTGBurgeoning. Step number 2. Select either membership or support. Membership will enroll you into Pack Wars for $5 each month. Support will cost $5 for 1 month. Step number 3, complete payment information. The name you use will appear on the site. Use your real name, use your YouTube handle, or use no name at all and be anonymous. Be sure to include your email address in the information. Step number 4, most importantly, prepare for war.